based in the Northeast. I'm the New Hampshire Regional Coordinator for SheJumps. We have teams all over the country, setting up events, brand ambassadors, volunteers. I'm a volunteer. We do have a small paid staff as well, but mostly it's a volunteer network. So if you're ever interested in that, go online. There's a volunteer form you can fill out and we'll contact you if we have an event in your area, and we'd love your support. I've been a volunteer with SheJumps for just over 5 years, and I do all kinds of events, from kids events to adults, rock climbing, mountain biking, skiing, try to do something every season. There are events that happen all year long, so definitely check out our events calendar at shejumps.org. And there's also local Facebook groups. So we have like SheJumps Northeast, and we'll post a lot in there. So definitely try to find your local SheJumps crew if you haven't done that already. I think a lot of you probably are familiar with SheJumps, but we are all about getting women and girls of all backgrounds into the outdoors and better access to the outdoors. So we serve girls who are 6 and up, women 18 and older, who either have never participated in outdoor activities or are active members of the outdoor community looking to give back, like Sam, and share their passion. And I think it's really important to say that SheJumps is an inclusive organization. We welcome all women and all girls, transgender and cisgender, as well as non-binary people who identify with the women's community. And we really strive to be an ally in the fight against racism. And we acknowledge that many of our events and programs take place on traditional Indigenous lands. We are also a nonprofit, and we do a lot of fundraising. So definitely check that out as well, because that helps fund programs like these and others. So that's me, that's SheJumps. And I also want to talk a little bit about Sam, because we are so lucky to have Sam doing one of 2 workshops. This is the first of 2. The next one is on June 8th, and we'll talk about that at the end. But Sam is a certified mountain bike coach and Avalanche educator and Splitboard guide and a health coach. She's amazing. Sam incorporates mindset coaching and health coaching into her skills programs and runs programs for female athletes to help them get back in touch with their inner wisdom and strength. And Sam's mission, similar to our mission at SheJumps, is to get more women out on bikes and skis and splitboards, exploring the external landscape of the mountains as well as their internal landscape. And she'll talk a little bit more about what that means. These sports, as many folks know here, teach us so much about ourselves if we're open to listening. Growing up, Sam wanted to be a therapist to help people live a little happier and healthier. And she went to college and traveled around and picked up mountain biking and splitboarding, and her whole world changed. Being in the mountains connected her not only to her physical body, but her emotional and spiritual body as well. Through that, she started coaching and guiding and wanting to share that passion with as many people as possible, like everyone here today. And as the years went on, Sam became fascinated with the effects of mindset and nutrition on performance and ability to show up within every sport, professionally and personally. So she studied more and went back to school to become a health coach. And Sam noticed a gap within the outdoor coaching industry. And it became really obvious that there was not a lot of people addressing those 2 key things together, and how they impact our time in the mountains. So by combining those passions, she created Sam Crow Coaching. Follow her on Instagram, find her online. Sam, I'm gonna make sure that you're plugging those things too, because I follow you as well and find it super useful. Sam's dedicated to helping women, also non-binary people that identify with the women's community, just like SheJumps, connect with their bodies and gain confidence and live a healthy, fulfilling life on and off the mountain. So Sam, we're so happy to have you here. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. So I'm Sam. I'm based here in Ogden, Utah, and I'm so excited to be here tonight with SheJumps. And the fact that our missions do overlap quite a bit in different areas is quite beautiful. And I think just being able to have this collaboration with SheJumps is a huge opportunity for me. So thank you all for being here. And for those of you who are watching the recording and aren't here live, thank you for coming back and watching the recording and spending an hour with us. So let me share my screen. Okay. Jamie, do you want to just give me a thumbs up? Make sure that that's good to go.
We can see it, but we see your kind of full desktop. So not just the shared document. I always like to give people a heads up. I'm always sharing my screen. This is perfect. We can see it perfectly now. I'm always like, we can see your screen.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Perfect. We are there. Okay, so I call this workshop the Mountain Bike Starter Kit because basically it is getting us amped up and ready to make the decisions both on our bikes, on our components that we want on our bikes, what we need to pack, and what skills we need to learn getting into the sport if we're new to it. You don't know what you don't know. So hopefully this kind of fills your bag with a little bit of knowledge and you can take it from here and go start mountain biking on your own and feel confident in picking out your own bike, as well as what to pack on the trails and what you want to start focusing on as far as skills go. So first, we're going to go over finding your perfect bike. A lot of times people will take recommendations from their partner or their friend, and they might have a different biking style than what yours looks like. So when I say your perfect bike, we're going to go over all the different styles and which ones like cater to which kinds of biking. Then we're going to go over bike maintenance tools, so things to have on hand so you can do those easy repairs at home and you're not going to the bike mechanic every week or so to do minor adjustments that are pretty fairly easy. So I want to empower you to start getting to know your own bike by maybe bringing these tools into your garage or apartment, whatever you got. And then we're going to go into what's in my pack. So what I like to pack out on the trails. And I'm going to encourage you all to throw other things in the chat as well as we go along. If there's anything else that you find that you can't leave the house without, that you really like in your pack. And then we're going to dive into the 9 fundamental skills. So these are the skills that you'll find like PMBIA and I forget the other acronym for the other bike course leader thing, but these are the skills that are required for the level 1 training program. So this is something that is researched and proven and tried and proven. So you'll know which ones you want to focus on, and then we'll go into what's next. Okay, so finding your perfect bike. First, we're going to talk a little bit about sizing because I know that it's kind of tricky, especially if you're in between sizes like I am and fit into 2 different categories. So you want to go smaller if you have a shorter torso. Maybe you enjoy a more casual riding position. And what I mean by that is this is going to be a more aggressive riding position. A smaller bike is going to naturally sit you up a little bit taller. So this is just if you're in between sizes, right? You want to go smaller if you enjoy that casual riding position. Maybe you have less flexibility, or maybe you want a more nimble ride. Makes sense. A smaller bike is going to be a little bit more playful and a little bit more nimble. You're going to be able to maneuver it a little bit easier. Then we're going to go bigger if you have a longer torso, enjoy a more aggressive riding position. So opposite, we're going to be a little bit further forward because of that longer wheelbase. And then if you're more flexible and don't have a problem with that longer reach, and want a more stable and sturdy ride. So something that feels a little bit more grounded, maybe more like a monster truck versus like a trials bike. And if you are right in between, or if you're in an actual size group, like right in the middle of it, great, obviously go with that one. But if you're in between sizes, that's what I'm talking about here. Okay, then we're going to go over bike styles. So the styles we're going to cover are cross country, trail, all mountain, or enduro. So there are so many different bikes out there and it's easy to get overwhelmed with all the choices. So let's narrow it down by deciding which style of bike fits your style of riding. With each bike style, we'll look over the front suspension, rear suspension, weight, and the pros and cons of what these different combinations give you. So the first one is our cross-country style bikes. Our front suspension is going to be ranging from 100 millimeters to 120 millimeters. The rear suspension is going to be maybe a hardtail to 100 millimeters. And the weight of these bikes usually is around 25 pounds. So a little bit lighter. If you don't know what an average weight of a bike is, 25 pounds is pretty light. And I'm sure some of the more higher end ones get even lighter than that. So the pros of this is it's a great pedaler, great climber, It's efficient in its pedaling. It's lighter weight. It does have a little bit less suspension, but that is good for long, flowy, smooth rides. So if your style of riding is going to be more flat, smooth green trails, or even blue trails that are just weaving in and out of things that are fairly mellow without big obstacles, and you don't foresee yourself wanting to go to the bike park, the cross-country bike is a really good style to start with or end with. Okay, the trail bike. So the front suspension on a trail bike is about 120 to 140 millimeters of travel. The rear suspension is 100 to 140 millimeters, and the weight is about 25 to 27 pounds. So it's not a huge weight difference, but the couple of pounds do make a little bit of a heavier bike for you. It still cruises uphill. It might have a lockout mode, so you would be able to lock out that rear shock for better pedal efficiency. It's more versatile, probably the most versatile out of all the bikes, and is capable to tackle a variety of conditions. So if you see yourself wanting to do cross-country trails, maybe go into some bigger techie sections, start practicing jumps and drops, the trail bike will get you through all of that. Then we have the all-mountain and enduro bike. So the front suspension is 150 to 170 millimeters. To remind you where we were with the cross country, that was 100 to 120. So we're getting pretty beefy over here. The rear suspension is 140 to 165 millimeters, and the weight is about 27 to 30 pounds. So we're getting a little bit heavier, and these ones don't climb as well, but they are capable of a lot of climbs, and they're capable of almost all the downhill except for like true downhill that you'll find at bike parks where you'll see like people riding downhill bikes. The suspension is plush. It's good for lift access. It's a good hard trail hitter, and it's nice and slack and stable. So this is the bike that I currently have, and I'm actually wanting to move more into the trail and cross country, but this bike has gotten me through all of the different bike parks that I've gone to, as well as the trails just out in my backyard. Maybe it feels a little sluggish and slow on the uphill, but it does still get me to where I'm going. So just because it's a little bit slower on the climb doesn't mean that it can't climb. Okay. So I'm curious, do you all have a preference on what style, or did you learn what style of bike that you're going to want in the future? Feel free to put that in the chat. I would love to hear it. Trail bike. Yeah, Jamie.
I was going to say too, Sam, while folks are dropping stuff in the chat, if they want that, I'm in between sizes, like so many of us are. And I was nervous. I was like, oh, I should get the small, you know, I was just starting to mountain bike. It seemed like it was going to be a good idea. And then I went with the medium. I have a longer tour, so I didn't know. And I'm like kind of in that more aggressive stance that you were talking about. I'm like, oh, like this makes total sense. That was super helpful to share.
Yeah, actually this frame right here is one that I broke, and it's a small. And so when I got it replaced, I was like, do you mind sending me a medium? I feel like I want a medium instead. And they did. And same thing, like I loved the longer bike for myself. And I'm not sure if that's because I have a longer torso. I don't think I do, but I do enjoy that like slack and stable.
Yeah, totally.
Trail, because it's the most versatile. It really, really is. It's going to get you, especially if you are just starting out, it's going to get you so far. Not sure what mine is, but I was all about getting a full suspension after using one for the semester. Yeah. So we're probably riding a hardtail previously, and now just coming into the world of full suspension is a game changer. Awesome. Okay. Let's jump into bike components. So we're going to cover a few of them. We're going to cover dropper post, tubeless tires, wheel size, and frame material. There are so many options to each style of bike. So I'm going to cover these things that might be more personal and enhance your ride the most. So the dropper post, a lot of new bikes come with dropper posts, and if yours did not come with a dropper's post, it might be your next investment. Like once you get a dropper post, there is no going back, but don't let it stop you from buying a bike that otherwise is perfect for you, because you can add it really easily. It's good for mixed terrain that goes up and down, and you need those quick body adjustments and quick movements of like being able to pedal up something. And then as you're going down something, you want your seat down. So for those of you that don't know, the best way to remember it is climb up, seat, ride down, climb up, ride down. You want your seat up for the climb and down for the downhill. And if you can't afford a dropper post, get a quick release seat post clamp. So if you right now currently need an Allen key to adjust that, it's a lot easier to have that quick release clamp, because then you don't need to get your multi-tool out to adjust that. And you can make those adjustments pretty easily and quickly. And that actually is pretty efficient if your trails around your house are like more up and then down, kind of like the trails in Park City. I'm noticing, I just moved to Ogden a year ago, they're much more like up and down cross country style. So having that dropper post, I use it a lot. And you can find those quick release seat post clamps at most bike shops. Tubeless tires. So with tubeless tires, you're able to ride at a lower tire pressure, which creates a smoother ride. When we had previously tubes in the tires, we had to have them at a higher pressure or a higher PSI, because we didn't want to get a pinch flat. So when that tire would fold, that tube would fold with it and get caught in between the rim and the rock and get a little hole in it. So now without that, we can ride at a lower PSI, and those tires actually kind of squish and form to the ground a little bit more, giving us another line of suspension that's a little bit more plush and cush. So it absorbs some of the smaller bumps and maintains good ground contact. And they reduce a little bit of weight. So if you've seen bike tubes before, they are pretty bulky unless you get those like orange tubelitos. Jamie, have you heard of those tubelitos?
I've never heard of that. What is that?
It's this really small tube that's like orange and it folds up really compact. It's pretty light, but they are like triple the price of a regular tube, but worth it if you're trying to save weight.
It's like cost per use, maybe saving weight. Yeah, I feel like sometimes it's like you have to figure out what's worth the investment, long term. I feel like nothing's worse than buying like a lot of things as you progress, and then you're like, oh, I wish I just started with this thing. It's like so tough to gauge that.
It is. And a lot of times we try to, and it can go the other way too, where you feel like you need all these different things before you start. So just monitoring where you're at, like, are you creating more obstacles for yourself before getting into the sport than that actually need to be there? And also it can go the way you said, like, maybe it is worth a little bit of extra investment at times. But so the big black tubes that usually came in the wheels, they're like pretty heavy and they're bulky. So we have 2 of those on our bike. That adds a little bit of weight. And then you also have to carry an extra tube. That adds a little bit of weight. And once we have tubeless tires, you're able to go down just to the one in your pack to maybe help you out if you do get a flat tire and the tubeless tire doesn't seal back up. So no more pinch flats, and the small holes seal up on their own with this thing called stands. It's basically like this liquid glue inside your tire that stays liquid until it seeps out of a hole, and then it kind of forms a little plug in there. So it's really, really nice, especially if you have goat heads in your area or cactus or anything that like will make small punctures. Bigger punctures, you're probably going to have to put a tube in or a piece of bacon or a dart, which we're not going to go over here, but they're basically just like other forms of plugs that are a little bit bigger. Wheel size. So the 2 that we're going to go over are the 27.5 and the 29er, because those are the most common that you're going to find on bikes today. So the 27.5 are easier to jump, they're good for smaller riders, and they're a little bit easier at cornering. The 29ers roll a little bit faster, they float over bumps and holes a little easier, and they maintain their speed. However, I don't want this to be like something where you're like, oh, the 29er sounds great, but the perfect bike that I just found is that 27.5. It won't make that drastic of a difference, especially if you're newer getting into the sport, but it's good to know the pros and cons of both. So again, 27.5, easier to jump, good for small riders, and easier for cornering. 29ers roll faster, float over bumps and holes, and maintain their speed. And then frame material. So we've got carbon and aluminum. The carbon is a better strength to weight ratio. So it's a little bit lighter and a little bit stronger, but it's a little bit more expensive. The aluminum is a little bit more forgiving, a little bit heavier, and less expensive. Also, since I pointed this out earlier, this frame doesn't look broken, does it? It looks pretty ready to go, but it has a small gash in it that went through multiple layers of carbon, and now the whole frame is compromised. So if you're somebody who is learning and maybe don't want to maybe harm their whole bike by like maybe taking a bad crash, or you're worried about that, the aluminum is a really good way to go, just because it is more forgiving. If you do get a big gash or scratch in it, it usually doesn't go very far down. And the carbon, as soon as it's compromised, it's compromised. You can go to a carbon repair shop, but it's around like $500 to $1,000 to get that repaired. I know I looked into getting this repaired just to sell it to somebody or just to give it to somebody. It's like, ooh, that's a hefty penny. So aluminum is good for if you're on a budget and you foresee yourself trying some gnarly stuff and maybe taking some crashes. Carbon's really good for a little bit lighter, and if you have a little bit more of a budget. But I've also crashed many times on my other carbon bike that's not on the wall, and it's still doing fine. So don't be afraid that your carbon bike is going to explode if you take a couple of crashes on it, or many crashes like I have. Okay, awesome. So bike maintenance tools. So the floor pump is the first one we're going to go over, and this is going to be part of your daily ride checklist. I like to have my floor pump with a pressure gauge. That way I can always pump up my tires to the same PSI every single time. That consistency really does matter, and it also allows you to play with that a little bit easier. So if you have the gauge right on the pump, you're able to be like, I wonder what it'd feel like to take a couple pounds out or put a couple pounds in. You don't need this. You can definitely use a hand pump if you have one, but it is definitely really helpful, especially at the trailhead when all your friends are waiting on you and you need to pump out your tires. And then if you are putting on tubeless tires, you can seat the tubeless tires with a floor pump. It is pretty hard, but if that's something that you're trying to do on your own and you only have a floor pump, that is something that is possible. And this is something that I do before every single ride, is check my PSI, because it does change quite a bit. And the other part of your daily checklist is the lube and towel. So I wipe my chain and lube it before every ride. If you're in the PC Salt Lake area or somewhere like it where it's really dry lube works best. But if you work, I guess you probably play where you work, but if you bike in a place that has more of a wet climate, wet lube is going to work best. And you always want to lube and wipe off your chain before about every other ride. That's just going to keep your drivetrain moving smoothly and help elongate that lifespan of your drivetrain. The drivetrains are really expensive, so being able to keep up on that does go a long way as well.
I didn't realize it was that often. That's a good note just for myself. Like regular maintenance is probably not, this on the same cadence for like different parts of the bike and that sort of thing. Like lubing every other ride or, once a week or whatever makes a ton of sense. Definitely not something I'm doing currently.
Yeah. I've noticed like my drivetrain was having a lot of issues last year, and I definitely was slacking on lubing and wiping it off. And this year I've been more consistent with about every other ride and I haven't had any issues with it. So yeah, I'm going to be doing that now from now on. Okay. A shock pump. So having one of these comes in handy when you're setting up your own suspension, or it's been a while since your suspension was set up for you and you want to make sure it's still at the same place. So your bike might have a pressure gauge chart on it that's specific for your shock. If it does, find your weight and go to the recommended setting to start, and then you can fluctuate from there. To check your suspension sag. So your suspension sag basically just means the amount that your suspension compresses when your body weight is on it. You step on the bike carefully with both shocks open, and it should compress that rear shock about 20 to 30%. Rear shock, 20 to 30%. And then for the fork, it's about 15 to 25% of that as well. So when you are testing this, sometimes it is helpful also to open up the shocks, get on your bike, pump it a few times, And then put your little O-rings, there are these little rings that are on the suspension, put them all the way down to the stanchions so that they're up against that, so that when you sit on it, it'll mark your place of where your body weight put it to. I wish I had a shock to show you all these things. I should do that for the next one for sure. And when you are getting on and off your bike, you just want to be really careful that you're not bouncing on it while you're doing that. When you're trying to get that final reading. So 20 to 30% in the rear, 15 to 25% on the fork. The Allen wrench set. So this will come in handy to tighten any loose bolts and make adjustments on your levers for a more comfortable hand position or a more comfortable dropper seat or brakes, wherever you need to make those adjustments on your handlebars. We've got a lot of things going on up there. So we want to make sure they're in a good position where they're not like wrenching our wrist back or we're having to like scoop too far forward. Having an Allen wrench set on hand allows you to make those adjustments for yourself, as well as tighten any bolts throughout your entire frame. So all the way through it. Then we have the Torx wrench set. Use less than an Allen set, but it's nice to have on hand, especially if your bike has SRAM components. So if your bike has SRAM components, you're probably going to need this in order to adjust your brake levers for sure. And this one has like 3 that we use at home. The Allen wrench set has like 9 or 10. I forget how many exactly, but it's quite a few. Tire levers or Pedro tire levers. Pedro tire levers, I'm not affiliated with them at all, but honestly, for the past like almost 10 years of biking, the Pedro tire levers have yet to fail me. And you want at least 2 of these. And it's always nice to have more on hand just in case they break. But now since I've gotten Pedro tire levers, I honestly just carry the 2 on me and I don't need any more. And these are going to help you to change a flat. Slick Honey, and it's not an energy gel or a trail snack. This is for your dropper post and your suspension. So if your dropper post is slacking on the return, give it a good wipe down and then add a little of this honey to it, as well as your suspension. You can do the same to that as well if you're noticing it getting really sticky. Also, if your suspension is getting sticky, you'll need to use suspension cleaner. So after lots of riding, the dust and dirt and grime can get in between the stanchions and lowers. And this cleaner will help you save money by saving your seals from getting beaten up too quickly by all that dirt and dust and grime getting into it. And then that leads us into the cleaning supplies. So it is so important to take good care of your bike. These things are expensive. It is quite the hurdle to get into the sport. And if we take good care of it, it'll last a lot longer and it'll treat us a lot better. So you can either get a kit that's specifically designed for this, or you can just go to your like local department store and buy a variety of brushes. So the things that I have within mine, I have a big soft bristle brush. So something that's not going to scratch this nice, beautiful frame of mine. And also a small stiff bristle brush. Try to say that 10 times fast. Stiff bristle brush to clean your cogs, your drivetrain and your chain. And then the soft bristle brush to clean your suspension and your frame. A microfiber towel to wipe down the suspension and make it nice and shiny. Make sure that there's no dust and grime in there. A bucket just for your soapy water. And the one thing that I do have added on there that's like a specialty item is a chain scrubber. So the chain scrubber that I have, I think is from Park Tool. It is just this contraption that you can like close on over your chain as you pedal through. And it cleans all the little like nooks and crannies of your chain. And it really does help save like the life of your chain and your drivetrain. But you don't have to get that. You can use that small bristle brush and just slowly go through the whole chain as you spin. And the cleaning product that I use is Simple Green. It's the best all-around bike cleaner. It's cheap. You can find it anywhere. It's also biodegradable. So win, win, win. All right.
Sam, we have a couple questions. The first is really around kind of like riding purposefully, potentially. So we have someone who used to row in college. They were told that if they were going to crash, to try to hit the obstacle head on, if you could try to control a crash, maybe less likely on biking, because the fix was easier if they scraped the side or the bottom of the shell against something. The fix was generally easier if they hit it head on versus like scraping or puncturing. Is there any similarity with biking, like that you could speak to? I think maybe not, if you could like sort of control where you're crashing almost.
Yeah, I don't think the head-on thing works quite the same for mountain biking. I was trying to think, like, sometimes there are times where like the side of my tire like scrapes off of a rock and I kind of hit my rim, which isn't good. But I don't ever do that intentionally anyways. I'm not trying to do that. So I don't know if there's like a straightforward answer to that. But the crashing, it is good to be a good crasher, and something that helps you with that is your body position and keeping that loose grip and loose, just like body position in general, to be able to react to that and ditch your bike when needed. But yeah, I wouldn't say like go towards the obstacle head on to avoid anything.
Yeah. Two more questions related to tools. Would you recommend an L bracket style Allen wrench or a folding style Allen wrench? I think you touched on this a little bit, but anything else to add there?
I have both. So the L bracket is really nice because it gives you a little bit more leverage. If my brain is seeing them correctly, I'm assuming the folding style is like that multi-tool set. And the L bracket is more of the set that's like individual, that is actually an L shape. But that L shape does give you more leverage. The multi-tool is just for out on the trails to make those minor adjustments when you need to. But otherwise, I do use the L style at home because they are a little bit easier.
Awesome. And would the folding style be able to reach all the angles? I think yes, but more like a quick fix versus, something that you might have to do more intensely.
Exactly. So actually, I just used my multi-tool to fix somebody's caliper on our last ride because their rotor rub was so bad. We had to like move her caliper so that it would stop rubbing on one side. And it was difficult with the folding style to get that just right. I only got like a tiny bit of a turn before I had to go back and get another tiny bit of a turn. So the big L ones work really, really well for that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Good questions. Thank you. Keep them coming. Makes my brain think, and then I'm not just going through the regular motions here. Okay, so what's in my pack? Snacks, water, and electrolytes are number one. Your friends will not invite you again if you steal all their snacks, right? And it's always good to pack more water than you need or than you'll think you'll need, especially if it's a hot or humid day. Just the other day, I went out with some friends and we ended up taking a little bit longer of a lap than I anticipated, but I really wanted to do it. And I ended up running out of water. And I was like, darn, I always tell people to bring more water than they need. And here I am running out of water and taking my friends. So packing a little bit extra, especially on a hot and humid day. Also, if it is really hot and humid and you're sweating a lot, or even here in Utah, it just gets hot in general, not very humid, pretty dry, but we sweat a lot and it evaporates and we don't even notice that it's evaporating. Sometimes we don't notice how much we're sweating. Electrolytes are something that I always go out with on a ride that's over an hour or two. So electrolytes help replenish all those minerals and salts and carbs within your body to help you keep going and stop fatigue and cramping and headaches. They also just give you energy. So definitely consider putting electrolytes, maybe if you're not into like having in your Camelback. I like to have a separate water bottle on my frame that holds the electrolytes. And as far as snacks go, I encourage, like, it depends on, everybody's body is different, right? But typically for the majority of people, a carb-rich snack works the best. We're not looking for a lot of heavy proteins or fats when we're pedaling on the trail, especially if we're going for a longer ride. It's those easy digestible carbs that work the best for us. Obviously, if you're going for a really, really long ride, then you're going to need more proteins and fats, but something to keep in mind and see what works well for your body. I do encourage a lot of my clients to try different snacks on the trail and see what works the best for them. Flat kit. So in the flat kit, I have 2 tire levers, an extra tube, a hand pump, or a couple of CO2 cartridges with an inflator. So the hand pump is great because you never run out of air, right? However, it takes a little bit longer to fix that flat. The CO2 is great because it's quick. So if you're not sure what the CO2 is, it's basically like those little whippet things that people did for whipped cream, I think. But now they have like an attachment on them that can go onto your, I am blanking on the name of the little thing that comes out of the tire right now.
We're all envisioning it. I have no idea what the name of that is. It's probably something that we do normally, but we know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Sarah, if you know, you can put it in the chat. But basically it goes and inflates your tire really, really quickly and can get you moving a lot faster. But once you run out of CO2, you are out of CO2, right? So I actually end up carrying both. I'll carry a hand pump and CO2 cartridges on most rides. If I'm going out for a really quick ride, that's not very far from the house, I just bring my CO2 because it's light and easy and I'm on my way. So 2 tire levers, extra tube, hand pump, or a couple of CO2 cartridges and an inflator for your flat kit. Your first aid kit. So you can buy a pre-made one or you can make one yourself. I'm going to copy paste what I put in my first aid kit here just so that I don't have to read through it all and then you can copy paste it into your own. But these are things that I like to have on hand, not a ton, and it doesn't have to be super bulky. And if some of this stuff seems excessive to you, that's fine. I'm wondering if I have that quick clot. Valve stem. Yes, Jamie.
That wasn't me. That was Caitlin Bennett. Shout out to Caitlin Bennett.
Shout out to Caitlin Bennett.
Quick clot in the Q&A. Thank you, Caitlin.
Yes, thank you. Quick clot is also a good thing to have on hand. I've had somebody have a puncture wound before out on the trail, and the quick clot basically was able to save him from losing a lot of blood from a little wound. And if there's anything else that you would add to the first aid kit that you don't see on this list, feel free to share it in the chat. I only know what I know, so you can also share what you bring. And then the bike first aid kit, it needs a first aid kit too. So what I like to put in mine is zip ties. So say if the derailleur breaks off, the derailleur hanger is a common part to break. You can zip tie that up to your frame so it's not dangling or getting caught in the spokes and then causing a further problem like broken spokes. A multi-tool, so something that has those Allen keys on there, maybe some Torx wrench adapters, and then it can have a chain breaker on there as well. But if it doesn't, you can get a separate chain breaker tool as well. And any tool that you know is specific to your bike. So if you have something that's maybe a little bit wonkier that you know isn't as common, it's good to have that tool on hand out on the trail just in case. Okay, did we have any questions there, Jamie?
We do. First is taking us back a little bit, back to tires. And this person has a fat bike and they run summer tires and winter studded tires and has tubes. If she changes over to tubeless, how easy or hard is it to change over, like trying to avoid having to bring it into a shop to change tires at the end of each season?
That's a really good question. So I actually don't have much experience with fat tires at all, so I can only speak to mountain bike tires, but to change those over, it's definitely a lot easier to do if you have an air compressor at home. Like I said, you can do it with the floor pump, but it is definitely really, really a lot easier and more helpful if you have an air compressor at home. And then if you do have an air compressor, it's fairly easy. So what I like to do with mine is to leave them out in the sun and get them nice and warm and rubbery before I try to put them on, because cold rubber doesn't stretch as much as soft, warm rubber, right? So that helps. That's like a little trick that I like to use. And then also when you're putting a new tire onto a rim, if you can get both of the sides to the middle where it comes maybe a little further down, it's less of a circumference or a diameter, get it all the way to the middle before you get that next side on and put it all the way to the middle. I'm wondering if I'm saying that in a way that you can understand, but Basically it brings the tire a little bit closer to itself, so it's not so hard to pry on. But definitely watch a video online. There are so many videos online for changing tires, and they do a really good job.
Awesome. And we have a couple that are in the chat. About favorite electrolyte brands, and like running goos, are those good for biking? That's another question that came up. I like Liquid IV. Someone else was jumping in, the Scratch Energy Chews. Anything else that you have to share? And anybody else, please drop what you like in the chat too. I think folks are interested in that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different electrolyte brands out there. If you're somebody that has a harder time snacking, I highly encourage you getting one that does have carbs in it, like the Scratch brands. Like those ones do allow you to get a little bit of that glucose intake while you're drinking your electrolytes, which is super helpful. And I know some people don't like eating while they're out on their bike, so making sure you have that sugar and little energy boost to help you along the way. Also, if you are a salty sweater like I am, like you'll know if you're a salty sweater, you'll kind of feel it on your face after a bike ride or a long, hard ride. It just feels like a little bit gritty on your face. I add a couple grinds of salt extra to my water too. But Scratch is the one that I primarily use. I love it. And then was there a part two to that question? Oh, the gels.
Yeah.
So the gels are great. Yeah, awesome. If you like gels and you use them in other sports and they work well with your body, awesome. I don't like gels. I think they're kind of like, I just can't get over the texture of them. So I really like the Scratch bars. They have like these marshmallow Rice Krispie bars that are newer that I absolutely love. And then they also have just their standard energy bars, and the peanut butter chocolate is my favorite. Were there any other questions?
No other questions for this section.
Element. Yes, Element is awesome. And it actually has a lot more sodium in it too, which is sweet, especially for us salty sweaters. However, it is with stevia. So if you're looking for an energy boost alongside it, Element won't give that to you. I also bring bug wipes. Yeah. We don't have as many bug wipes or bugs in this area, which is really nice. Sam Splint for the first aid kit. Totally. Okay. Now let's move into the 9 foundational skills. So these are the skills that you need to know in order to progress within your mountain biking. And if you're looking to learn some bigger maneuvers, even if you're an intermediate rider, making sure that these skills are honed in and refined is a really good place to go back to. Actually, before every season, these are skills that I go back to frequently, and just make sure that they're still in good running order. So body position is the first one. This is where everything stems from. Your body is the first line of suspension. So making sure that your body is nice and nimble, but can also resist some of the momentum from braking or going over obstacles. And it also allows for stability and for you to absorb different impacts on the trail. And there are 4 different body positions. We have the neutral position, which is just your tall, relaxed position that allows you to rely mostly on your skeletal structure. This is like your coasting position where maybe you're on a really easy, flat path or on the road. This allows you to use less energy. And then we have the ready position, which is going to be nice and low and wide. We're going to be nice and wide with our arms. We're going to have a slight bend in our knees, and we're going to be hinging at the hips. And we want our chin in both neutral and ready to be over our stem and our bum over our seat. The climbing position. So imagine I'm going uphill right now. I wonder if I'll put this down a little bit. Climbing position is going to be more of a hinge at the hips. Our bum is going to be on the seat. We're going to be nice and light on our grip. And that's basically it. We just want to make sure we're hinging forwards, that we put that pressure and that weight back on that front tire so that we're not losing traction on that front tire. And then the braking position just allows us to resist that momentum of braking itself. So with the braking position, we shift our weight just slightly back, we put our heels down, and that'll allow us to resist that motion moving forward and a slight bend in the arms. And these body positions are always a spectrum, right? So we're not just going from neutral to ready to neutral to ready. It's just like adapting to what is coming at us. Braking. So knowing how to use your brakes properly, which one to use and when and how much will make all the difference to your speed and control. So when you get comfortable with the stopping force of your bike, you will actually be able to go faster and trust your reaction time. I actually just took my level 2 PMBIA course about a week and a half ago, and we went over another braking drill that I hadn't done before, and I improved my braking drastically. And it was basically just using our brakes to their full potential. So always coming back to this and getting a gauge on where your brakes are. Are they not working properly? Do you need a bleed? Do you need new pads? Moving on to shifting. So shifting is all about conserving your energy and using your power when the trail calls for it. So knowing which gear and when, as well as creating a more efficient pedal movement, will help you go further and for longer. So a lot of times what I see with newer people out on the trail is a poor pedal cadence. So sometimes I see them going like this, and they're breathing really hard, and their heart is pounding out of their chest. And you can tell they're just losing all their energy and spinning. And then I also see sometimes people just grinding so slow, and they're not necessarily breathing hard, but their legs are just aching. And you can tell it's taking a lot of force and a lot of strength. So finding that proper pedal cadence that's like right in between both of them, where you don't feel like your heart is going to explode and you don't feel like your quads are going to explode. And it's just using both of those. Terrain awareness. Where your eyes go, you will go. And I'm sure if you all have biked at all, you know this. If you're looking at a corner and you're looking past the berm, you get swept out and out past the berm. Or if you're looking at a rock on the trail, you focus on the rock and sure enough, you hit that rock. And when we get scared and see an obstacle coming up, we tend to focus on that as we're going up and over it as well, instead of lifting our eyes up to see what's coming up. And that doesn't set us up for maybe another obstacle. Maybe once we get over that first one, we get bobbled by the second because our terrain awareness is just a little off. This also shifts our balance and sets us up really well for the line ahead. So think about it, where your eyes are going, your chin is going to be going, and your body follows as well. And the distance you look ahead can also change with the amount of speed you have and the type of terrain you're riding. So I forget who it was, but from Saratoga, New York, that really technical terrain awareness is going to be a really big key component to that. We're going to be looking into the now and the next and constantly going back and forth. So now is about 1 to 2 seconds in front of your tire, and the next is about 3 to 6 seconds in front of your tire. So we're wanting to continuously scan the trail for what's coming up, what we're about to go over, and what we're going to go over. Cornering, the never-ending project, honestly. With cornering, all of your previous skills come into play. So body position to allow angulation. Angulation means we're leaning our bike over, but we're not actually moving our body with it. Rotation of the hips and compensating for uneven terrain. Braking, so braking around corners. We always start with 2 going into the corner. Once we are in the corner, we release the front brake and only use the rear brake if we do have to use our brake. And then as we exit that corner, we let go of the brakes and allow that to that force to keep our momentum going around. So 2, 1, none is what you say to yourself as you're biking through a corner. 2 brakes going in, 1 in the corner, and 0 on the way out. And in a gear, it also goes into shifting. So you want to have a gear that you're able to power out of the corner with as well. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I just go around the corners so slow, but sometimes they call for that. Honestly, the people that are really good at corners really allow that braking to come off at the end of the corner, and then are also in a good gear to gain some power after it. And then terrain awareness, to allow the bike and body to move smoothly through the corner. So a lot of times what happens is we get stuck on the corner itself, the very brink of it, and we don't continue our line of sight to the exit. So allowing your terrain awareness, your line of sight, to go around the corner as you go through. and keeping it about like 6 feet ahead of your tire. Okay, front wheel lift. Now we're getting into the exciting stuff. Front wheel lift, this is the start to a lot bigger maneuvers such as bunny hops, manuals, drops, and jumps. These are like the really cool things that we can't wait to do, or maybe are a little intimidated to do. We can start with the front wheel lift. So getting your timing and coordination down for this one can be a little bit tricky, but once you do, the bike does a lot of the heavy lifting. So when we're doing a front wheel lift, we are compressing our suspension and then exploding. And we're going to go into further detail. I go into further detail on all these skills within my mountain bike program that I'll talk about a little bit later. The rear wheel lift. This is the second half of your bunny hop and also helps you to learn how to unweight your rear tire to get over bigger obstacles. The rear wheel lift can feel really awkward for people at first, but once you figure it out, it's actually a lot of fun and allows you to kind of get used to that fore and aft movement on your bike. And what I mean by that is like moving your body forward and back on your bike. The pop. So we're combining both of our previous wheel lifts, so the front wheel lift and the rear wheel lift, into one, which is so much fun. Once I learned this skill and got really good at it, this made my riding so much more playful and so much more exciting. I was popping off of everything, just like figuring out the timing of it all. It can be a lot of fun to bring this skill to the trail and pop over rollers or just unweight your bike over certain obstacles. And then my personal favorite is the pedaling front wheel lift. It probably is the one that I use the least amount on the trail, but looks really, really cool. So the pedaling front wheel lift is helpful when you're climbing in technical terrain to unweight that front tire, and is also the first step to mastering the wheelie. So if you've ever seen people like pedaling with their front wheel up and just looking casual, they had to get really good at this pedaling front wheel lift first. Okay, any questions on the skills portion?
No questions yet on the skills portion.
Great, awesome. Well, then that basically wraps up the workshop portion. So if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll make sure to come back around to them as we finish up here. But let's keep this good thing going. So I have my own Summit Sisters mountain bike program. This is a self-paced virtual mountain bike program, and we take a holistic approach to skill building in this virtual program. This is for you if you have a busy schedule and need to do it on your own time at your own pace. If you like to come back and re-watch skill breakdowns multiple times, if you benefit from solo practice without the added pressure of the clock and the group, if you need more focus time on certain skills, if you have gone through a clinic and you're like, I don't remember half of that, but it was so cool and so good and I want to get that back, this will help you refine those and come back to all those 9 fundamental skills. Or if you're dipping your toe into the sport and aren't maybe ready to invest into a full beginner's 3-day clinic, which can be fairly expensive as well. So what this mountain bike program includes is the 9 fundamental skill videos and written breakdown and notes and worksheets for you. So I did this over the course of the whole last summer. It was so much fun. It was also really, really hot. My husband helped me record all the videos. It was hilarious and also just such a beautiful project that I was able to put together over the last summer of 2022. So the 9 fundamental skill videos, we go into really good detail. You also have access to me while going through this program. So if you're going through one of the skills and you're having a little bit of trouble, you can send me a message or send me a video and I'll be able to help you out. There are also 8 different holistic educational modules. That's ranging from everything from bike maintenance. I actually show you how to set up your suspension on your bike, also how to do a full bike check from your front tire to your rear tire, making sure everything is in good running order. And we also go over a mindset toolbox, so how to overcome those fears and the beginner's mindset. And we go over endurance and nutrition. We go over a lot of different things within the educational modules. Then you also have an online community of other individuals that are also going through this program.
Hey, Sam. Oh, finish up this, and then we've got 2 questions that did pop up.
Great. Okay, so the SheJumps special is going to be $100 off this program for the first 10 signups. You can use the code SheJumps100 at the checkout process, and it'll either take $100 off of your full payment, or there are monthly payments available as well. So if you are interested in signing up for that, here is the link to sign up. And if you're like, ooh, that sounds so cool, I want to read more on that, and you're somebody who does like to really dig into all the details, this is the link to learn more about it. And this special will be available to you for a week. So what was the question, Jamie?
That's so generous and awesome. So thank you for offering that to our participants. Super grateful. First is on the fundamental skills. Are those progressive? Like, should one be mastered before moving on to the next?
For the most part, yes. Body position is like number 1 for me. But they do get intertwined as you start to learn all the very basics of all of them, right? But let me go. So from the front wheel lift to the rear wheel lift, I wouldn't suggest doing any of these wheel lifts until we have mastered terrain awareness, shifting, braking, and body position. So these first 1, 2, 3, 4 are like, yes, let's learn these immediately. That's going to help you the most. And then once we get those dialed, we can move into cornering, because cornering involves all of those skills, right? And then once we master cornering, let's get into wheel lifts. That's going to be a lot of fun and add some playfulness to your riding.
All right, next is sort of more personal for you. What was the hardest trail you've had to face, and what was the most enjoyable? And maybe not specific trails unless you want to answer that, just because everybody's sort of all over, but maybe what made the hardest trail, and what made the most enjoyable trail, the most enjoyable trail?
Yeah. Ooh, I love that question. So the hardest trail is always the one that my ego gets influenced by. And that means I feel this pressure that I have to do this, that this makes me a good rider, that this is the next step that I should be doing, that I should be able to do that. They did that. That makes every trail so much harder. It's like a fear-based motivation of, since I'm afraid of doing this thing, that's why I need to do it. Or since I'm afraid that I can't do this thing, that's why I need to do it. And what makes it the most enjoyable trail, you all know I'm a mindset coach, so of course I'm going to take it this way, but what makes it the most enjoyable is when I'm curious and the most playful. So that is more of a positive way to go about stuff, instead of being like, this is what I'm working towards because I should. It's more of I wonder what I'm capable of and what I can make this trail, like a trail that I've done a million times, how I can make it something different, or this trail that I've never done before. I wonder what's going to come up and what I'm going to be challenged with. And I wonder what I'll overcome. That is probably not exactly what she was looking for when she asked the question, but definitely when my ego gets involved, it makes the trails so much harder. And when I'm able to just be playful and curious and, out there for fun, that's what makes it the most enjoyable for me. And I've ridden some trails that people call boring, and they've been a lot of fun.
It's interesting. I feel like whenever I ride with people who are super beginners, not that I'm like some crazy expert, everybody's always like, I'm so sorry, this must be so boring. It's like, no, you can find a way to enjoy every trail, ride a different line, or try one of these new skills. Like, there's always a way if you come at it with curiosity. Totally. And so I've had this conversation with so many people now, I think it's a common occurrence of oh, I'm so sorry, I'm in the back, or feeling bad because you're in the back. And somebody has to be at the back. And that's awesome. That if that's you one day, take it up and encourage yourself. And it can be really hard. And so acknowledging it's hard to be in the back. Yes. It's hard to feel like I'm a little bit slower than the rest of the pack. Sure. And then refocusing that onto what is important for you on that ride. And honestly, all the people ahead of you, as somebody who's been in the back and in the front, it never matters. It never matters as much as your brain or ego wants you to think it does. So true.
Mm-hmm. Was that all the questions?
That's it for questions for right now. Yeah.
Okay. Keep them coming if you have any. Okay. And then we have the one-on-one mind and body coaching. So this is when I work personally with different female or female identifying athletes, anybody who identifies with the women's community. We go over things like intuitive nutrition, getting back in touch with your body and its unique needs, lifestyle balance. If you're feeling a lot of burnout or fatigue, or feel like there's just something missing, that you're not addressing some part of your life, some part of who you are. Mental resilience. So building mental resilience, maybe in your day-to-day life, or maybe out on the trails. There's a lot of fears that pop out on our trails. And what I love about mountain biking and splitboarding is it really magnifies our strengths and our weaknesses. So sometimes when we're out on the trails, allowing those lessons to come through for like, ooh, I'm feeling an insecurity around this right now. And it allows us to see and build resilience around that. It creates awareness around it, which is the first step. So if you're looking to build mental resilience and work through those fears and learn those lessons and gain that strength, that's what I do within this, and as well as goal mapping. So goal mapping is my signature process for outdoor athletes to get the full potential out of their goals and out of themselves. And it's a really in-depth process, but it also leads to a lot of success. So the exclusive hangout, I'm offering 5 of you a 1-hour one-on-one mindset coaching. If you're interested in just seeing what one-on-one mind and body coaching looks like and what that could look like for you. This is a gift that I don't do very often. I haven't done it in a year. So these sessions are packed with value. They can serve as a catalyst to your biking season. We can dive further into maybe a goal that you have and refine the details. We can talk about obstacles you're needing support on. We can dive into lifestyle balance and burnout. We can walk through fear and building confidence. These sessions are tailored to you, and these are meant to be a standalone experience. So if at the end of it, you're like, one-on-one coaching is not for me, awesome. I still learn a lot from these sessions, and I get to meet some really rad women during the whole process. So don't hesitate to grab one of these. I would really love to meet y'all. And since I can't see your faces, I would love to put some faces to some names as well, and just help you through whatever you're going through currently. And we are ending a little bit early, but thank you all so much for joining. This was so much fun, and I hope you all got a lot out of it. If you have any further questions, feel free to email me at samcrowcoaching@gmail.com or follow me on Instagram at samcrowcoaching, and I hope we stay connected.
Thank you so much, Sam. And thanks to everyone for joining this afternoon, evening, whatever time it is where you're at today. Alaska, shout out to you. This was wonderful. One of 2. We're excited to keep building on these fundamentals, and really excited and grateful for all of the generosity that you're showing to the SheJumps community. So Sam, thank you for your time. And thanks again, everyone, for joining. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
Yes.
Folks.
Bye. And I just did see Sarah put the link in the bio, so definitely click on that to sign up for the next one.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you, Sarah.